one of the greatest shooters of all time, two-time academic All-American, and now broadcaster, one of the best in the business. So I'd like to welcome Terry Gannon. Thanks for coming on today.
Man, to be called a shooter by you, I take that to heart, man. That's all right. So I'll take that and I'll run with that. Great to be with you, man.
I've done my research. I know you can shoot the leather off the ball. So I've done a little research. So one of the fun things about doing these podcasts now is, it's kind of connected me with a lot of the Wolfpack alum. It's got me in touch with a lot of people that, necessarily haven't talked with a lot. And it also gives me an opportunity to kind of do my research to find out some things. So there's a few things we had in common that's kind of made me giggle a little bit. So you grew up in Illinois, in Joliet, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm an Indiana, Chicago. I'm an Indiana guy, and then you were also coached by your dad as well.
He was a coach all the way for 30 some years, and then he got ill, and so he didn't coach me in high school. Mm-hmm. He stepped away, but then he went to a different high school and coached again. So it was almost like, oh, so you didn't want to coach me, huh? I got you. Okay. But yeah, I growing up, I was the son of a coach, and we lived it, Yeah. So yeah.
So what was that like? Obviously, you had a kind of a coach in the house, and it was very similar to me. My dad didn't want to coach me in high school, so he took the freshman program, so I didn't have to kind of be involved with them. But right. What was it like being raised by a basketball-minded person?
Oh, I've got pictures from the time I was, before a year old, and I'm in a Joliet Catholic Hilltopper uniform. So I'll tell you what was great. Some of my greatest memories were when I was in grade school, whether it be second grade, third grade, whatever. It's when my dad started to have one of his players pick me up from school every day. So my school day would end. I'd get picked up by one of his players, go right down to the gym, suit up for practice, and I would be on the side with a ball, and they would practice, and I'd be shooting on the side the whole time. And then the games where I was in the locker room before the game, halftime, I sat on the bench. I had a little medicine cabinet there. I sat on the medicine chest, basically. Yeah. And there are pictures that I still have of that games. And then after the games, he would always have the players over to our house down in our basement, which was not a very nice basement. I don't know why they wanted to do that, but and he'd let them have a party, a get together, after every game. So he was really close. He was a player's coach, and I grew up that way. So eventually, to play for Jim Valvano, the two things they were exactly alike. I mean, they were so alike. And it was cool. We lived it, I was in the backyard shooting 5 hours a day in Joliet, Illinois, and the winter wasn't actually very nice. And so you keep one basketball by the heater, another one would last about 15 minutes. You'd go get the other one and hit so it would bounce, out there.
You knew that's the one thing about being from up north in Indiana, Illinois. You found a way to make it work. You found a way to get your shots in.
Yeah, exactly. In the summer you're down, okay, you got the playground, we'd have games down there, and I'd spend all day down there. But in the winter, and nobody's down there, and you're out in your backyard and you're shooting all by yourself. You got a little, back then, transistor radio that they have on the hood of the car, and you're shooting hoops all night. So it's good memories.
Yeah, great time. So talk about kind of your recruiting process. What was that like going from, obviously your high school to the college? What was your recruiting process like? And was it for sure like, I'm definitely going to NC State?
It was once Jim Valvano spent 30 minutes in my house on the home visit. Then it was done. In fact, he walked out and my dad said, "You're going there. That's where you're going." Prior to that, I was not a 6-footer who was a shooter, point guard who was a shooter in high school. I went to all the blue chip camps, and my name was on the radar, but I wasn't that blue chip early guy. So it was gradual. So my junior year, they were the mid-level college, the Central Michigans, the Loyola Chicagos. Once I got to my senior year is when the Big Ten really came in and started recruiting, and then NC State, actually, the way Jim Valvano even heard about me was through Sammy Esposito, who was the baseball coach at NC State. And what a great guy. So many stories about Espo. But he also played for the White Sox, including the 1959 Go-Go Sox, who went to the World Series. big Chicago guy, and he would read the newspapers every day, and he was reading about this guy who was a shooter and a baseball player as well. So he would bug V all the time. Hey, you need a shooter. Let's go 2 for 1 on this. We'll get a baseball player and a basketball player. And really, once V came to my house, he, had his tie undone within 5 minutes, his shoes off, feet up on the coffee table. And he and my dad just took a liking to each other and spent most of the time talking to each other. And that was it. Also, as great as the Big Ten was and is, and whatever you can argue, who, especially at that time, the ACC was it, man. It was the golden age of college basketball in the ACC. People stuck around for 3-4 years. It was pretty special. And I knew right away I wanted to go down to play in Raleigh.
Yeah, that was kind of my same philosophy. And it's funny you said that, it took 30 minutes for Jimmy V to make you commit. So I had a guy that, was with you as well, Sidney Lowe, who Coach Lowe to me, it took 30 minutes of my mom's lasagna for me to commit while he was there. So it's funny how that worked out. So he must have picked up a few pointers from Coach V.
Yeah. Well, Sid was a coach back when he was playing. I mean, he was born to be a coach, he was our coach on the floor and in the locker room. He was something.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you enjoy the recruiting process? Because I didn't. I thought it was a pain.
Yeah. So looking back on it, I wish I would have tried to enjoy it more. I committed really early. I committed like my junior year. My high school teammate, Julius Mays, ended up going, he was a year older than me, ended up going to state. And obviously Monty Tao is from Converse, Indiana, which is literally 10 minutes from my hometown. So I had a connection with him very early. I mean, I was only a 3-star recruit. I wasn't anything crazy, but they gave me that feel, that I wanted to be at, and it's very similar to Illinois. To me, Indiana is a huge, huge basketball state. I wanted to have that feel from going. I had a 7,500 gym, and we would put 7,000 people in the gym. Yeah. And I wanted to have that same feeling going to a big basketball program where I felt like basketball was first. And it ended up working out, obviously, and I'm 100% glad I did it. But looking back on it, I do wish I would have maybe kind of enjoyed the moment a little bit more. But I do know a lot of people that have said, it just starts to get frustrating after a while, because there's a lot of misled promises and things like that. And I think Coach Tao always said it best for me. And it's hard for players to see this. You commit to a school. And a lot of people, nowadays they commit to the coach. And when I only had Coach Lowe for 2 years, it made me really realize I'm really glad I chose NC State, because obviously you have the coaching staff, but I'm really glad I chose NC State.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. But the absolute, like people say, oh, it's got to be so great. You're so wanted, and they're coming in telling you how great they are. I hated it. I was a pain. Like, you're in high school, and you're right. I mean, you get everything out of the high school experience, and Indiana basketball, high school basketball. I mean, for anybody who wants to just go watch an unbelievable, you love hoops, do yourself a favor and go to Indiana and watch high school basketball. And Illinois is right there. Not quite the same, but it's right there. Same feel. You'd be in your living room talking to some coach, and they'd be selling you on how great their history program is. All you wanted to do is go down the street. Your friends were having a party, right? Yeah. And you're in high school. And I didn't enjoy the process. And you're right. You try to filter through who's telling you the truth and who's not, and just doing a sales job. I was glad to have that over.
Yeah, well, it's easy to look back on it and know you made a great decision. That's for sure. So what were your expectations? Obviously you're coming into college. I talk about, it's always a year of growth going from your senior year of high school to a big program. And now you're a freshman, sophomore, and you're still kind of young. What was your expectations coming into NC State?
First of all, I just wanted to be a part. I was so thrilled to be a part of a program with the history of NC State. And it wasn't that long before that it was the program of David Thompson and Monty Tao and Burleson and national championship won over along the way, Bill Walton and UCLA. It's a huge deal to me.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to be a part of that and contribute. I didn't have expectations. I want to get 20 minutes a game as a freshman or 10 minutes a game and be able to playing time. I didn't even think about that, to be honest with you. I wanted to be a significant contributor at a place like NC State. And my freshman year, I was able to. I got playing time and everything else, and just loved the experience. And I went home over the summer, and that's when, going into my sophomore year, they announced that conferences could use the 3-point shot if they wanted to, and the 30-second shot clock at the time. And the ACC said, we're going to do that. So my dad and I immediately went out in my backyard and drew the arc, measured it off, drew the arc, and just, I don't think all summer I took a shot inside that arc. And the next year, my sophomore year, I'm not sure I took many shots inside that arc. My sophomore year was the year of the national championship, and it grew. If you remember, we were struggling. Derek Whittenberg got hurt.
Yeah,
we darn near missed the NCAA tournament, but in hindsight, everything's 2020, and we don't win a national championship unless Whit gets hurt. Other guys develop playing time for me, for Ernie Myers, and so by the end of that year, we went in a much better team to the ACC tournament, the NCAA tournament. It's a long answer to your question, but that obviously was the impetus then for what now I look back on and say, oh my God, it was an experience so far beyond what I expected or hoped for, or had any right to think was possible going into college.
Yeah. And honestly, it makes 100% sense why you guys win a national championship, because now, like, I think about, kind of, I don't want to say my generation because it makes us look really bad, but I feel like my generation, they go in with the expectations of, I want to score, 20 points, or I want to play, 35 minutes. And, obviously it's easier for me to kind of look at it now and say, you got to have the, guys that come in and say, I'm going to be the best 3-point shooter. I'm going to be the best defender, the best rebounder, the best passer, to really make a team go. And that's kind of, I talked with Ernie, came on the podcast. I had Witt was on the podcast. And that's the one thing that you've noticed that everybody said is, I had a role for this team and I played it to the best I could, and it results in winning.
And you know what? You're right. And I'm not sure it is generational. It may be, but, so looking back, I'm not sure everybody thought that way. I'm sure there were plenty who didn't. But we did with that team. It just, and maybe it was Jim Valvano, maybe it was V, that brought that together and got us to buy in, because that's what it was. That team, more than any other team I've ever played on or been part of, just bought into their roles and accepted their roles. And if you can get a team to do that, that has some talent. And the other thing with that team is we had 3 senior leaders. We had Sidney Lowe, Derek Whittenberg, Thurl Bailey, the head, heart, and soul. They each played different roles, but they all were leaders. Like, you'd come to practice. There were some days when V wouldn't show up until 20 minutes into practice. It's okay. The seniors took over, and the assistant coach, and you did everything Sid and Whit and Thurl said you were going to do. And if you didn't, you were in trouble. You didn't even think twice about saying, no, I don't want to do this or that. You bought in, and then V came in, you worked on the other team and strategy, It was everybody bought in, everybody played a role. And I don't remember anybody complaining.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that I've learned is to be a successful team. I remember my Sweet 16 team. I had, role players in a CJ Williams, a Alex Johnson that may not get the recognition that they deserve. But the reason we went to a Sweet 16 and had a last second shot to go play Carolina in an Elite 8 is because of those guys. And that definitely.
By the way, I was watching and living and dying with every second of that. So that was a fun experience, man. That was a great run. That was a really cool run.
To this day, I remember I had Lorenzo Brown on the other day, and we were talking before we actually put it out. And we're just like, dude, I wish we could. We ran that little hammer play to throw the pass on the baseline, and it was just a little bit high. And I stepped on the line, and everybody asked me, they're like, if you didn't step out, would you make it? And I was like, yes, I was going to.
Absolutely, absolutely, darn right. Don't you have those regrets though? That's the only thing you can't. I mean, but you still do as a player. Yeah. There are certain losses, there are certain misses that still haunt me to this day. It makes no sense, but they do. They never leave you.
That's what I tell everybody. I'm a real stickler on my losses. I can remember everything I did wrong, but you start to ask me like, how many career threes did you have? And I'm like, I really don't know the exact answer. If you ask me how many I missed, I'm going to have the answer.
Believe me, I missed a shot against Notre Dame, which is the last game we lost in 1983 that would have won it at the buzzer. And I still am so angry about that. It was right, as a shooter. Felt great. It's in. I'm ready to raise my arm and celebrate. And it was out, and it was right on line, and doesn't go in for whatever reason. It still haunts me.
We'll get back to the show in a minute, but first, let me tell you about our partners over at DraftKings Sportsbook. With March Madness beating down our door, DraftKings is the best way for you to get a little action in on the game. If you have not downloaded the DraftKings Sportsbook app yet, what are you waiting for? It's the safest, it's the most secure, it's reliable, and it allows you to safely deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. And this week, they are offering my listeners a pretty sweet deal. If you sign up now with promo code FIELD68, you could turn $1 into $100. If one of the main event fighters in UFC 259 this weekend lands a single punch, that's it. One punch to turn $1 into $100. And don't worry, if MMA isn't your thing, DraftKings Sportsbook offers odds and promos on basketball, hockey, or whatever sport you are watching. But since they're basically giving away $100, you might as well sign up now, watch a little UFC, and remember to use code FIELD68. That's FIELD68. Must be 21 years or older. Offer available for a limited time only. Eligibility restrictions apply. Have a gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. We'll move to the national title. We've obviously touched on it a little bit. When you guys won that game, how did that change your life?
Oh God, there's so many ways. I mean, it changed everything. Intangibly. I actually knew in the moment, as soon as it was done. I remember saying to the guys on the bus going back to the hotel, you guys understand, this is going to have legs. This is going to be remembered. We are the 69 Nets. We are the 1980 Olympic hockey team. And they were like, shut the hell up. And, we don't want to hear that right now. I'm like, no. People are going to remember this. I didn't know that it would quite have the impact. And I think the 30 for 30 certainly added to that. But every day when I travel now, whether it's in an airport, whether it's at a golf tournament, literally every day, someone comes up to me and says, hey, Terry Gannon, that 30 for 30, Survive in Advance was great, man. It was my favorite 30 for 30, or I remember what I was doing the night of the national championship. Let me tell you, I was in a bar down the street and my buddies, it's incredible. Tangibly for me, it was an experience that then allowed me to take chances in my career and have the belief that V instilled the idea of why not? Yep. Why not? Somebody's got to do it. I'm a broadcaster. I never envisioned covering figure skating. Mm-hmm. The ABC came to me and said, hey, because ABC kind of signed me. I started as a college basketball analyst in the ACC and then branched out. I had to make a living, signed the deal with ABC back in the day in the early 1990s. And they didn't know what they were going to do with me. They just knew they liked me. Right. And so they call up and say, hey, we need you to go to Tokyo next week and call figure skating. I was like, okay, I know who Peggy Fleming is. That's about, and it was that brief moment where you either go, guys, I don't think I could do this. Or you go, why not? Somebody's got to do it. The way I started in college football, which I then called for 20 some years on ABC, was a Monday afternoon, and they called me up and said, "Hey, why don't you do play-by-play Saturday?" It was down at Georgia Tech. It was Georgia Tech against Carolina on ABC. I said, "Football play-by-play this Saturday?" Yeah. Again, that brief moment where you go, "You guys are nuts. You know how wrong this could go," or, "Yeah, why not? Somebody's got to do it." And it really was that team, that coach, that night that set that in motion for me and made all the difference.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So give me your best Jimmy V story.
So that's the hard question, right? That's
you can only pick one. Trust me. Hey, listen. I got another page here, and I'm telling you, I got a few. This may be on the easier side of the questions, but I'm interested. What's the best Jimmy V story?
Dude, I don't know if I could come up with the best. There are so many. He was larger than life. I mean, he was that person who went a mile a minute every minute he was awake. You know, every pregame pep talk, he was like that in the coach's office, just talking. I mean, he held court. I was a grad assistant along with Whit. My job basically was, as soon as the buzzer went off, was to go get some fried chicken, some wine, and some cigars for the post-game hang in the coach's office, which, you know, he'd have a cigar in one hand, a wine in the other, and he would hold court until 2 or 3 in the morning, and you weren't allowed to leave until he was ready to leave. And it was story after story. No, he, you know, even when I was deciding what to do, it all, you know, this, you played overseas. It all kind of came at once for me. I didn't want to, I knew I wanted to coach. My dad was a coach, as we say. I was a grad assistant. This is what I was going to do. And Jefferson Pilot came to me and said, "Hey, we've interviewed you a lot. You want to take a shot at TV?" At the same time, I had gone to a camp the year prior and eventually got an offer to go play overseas in Europe. And so I said, "V, I got to come talk about my future, you know, and you got to know V." I mean, he's like, okay, come on up tomorrow. Come see me tomorrow. So I go up to his office the next day. He's on the phone. And 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm just sitting there, right? And finally, he's like, "Hey, hang on. Terry, what do you want?" I'm like, I'm here to talk about my life, to figure out my life. You know, I thought you were going to help me. "Oh, yeah. Hey, hold on 1 second. All right, Terry, go." I'm like, okay, well, I got this offer to go play in Europe, you know, and you go, stop. Terry, you're short, you're slow, you can't jump. Who are you going to be, Walt Frazier? Move on with your life. It's like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I got a chance to go into TV. He goes, "Yeah, take it." He said, "If it doesn't work out, you got a job. We'll always hire you here. Why don't you take a shot?" I'm like, "Oh, so that's pretty much it?" He's like, "Yeah, pretty much." All right. So where were we? He's back on the phone. Like in 30 seconds, right? He's got my life figured out. And that's how I went into TV. And he was basically like, "No, boom, 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 boom." And there you go. But he was, man, he was one of us. You know, we would go hang down at his house and play, at the time, pool and pinball. There weren't the games that we have now.
See, the best part is you answered my next question. It's literally what made you go into broadcasting.
See, that was it. I mean, that really was it. And once I went into broadcasting, look, here's the thing. As a player, you know this. When you play that final game, there's a huge void in your life because you've been a part of a team since you can remember. And you've played this sport and you've gone to bed every night with thoughts of your jump shot in your head. You know, it never leaves you and you've lived this. And all of a sudden it's gone. So I needed something that would replace that team.
Yeah.
And coaching obviously would have been that. But TV, I didn't realize it. That also replaced that team. You are a part of a team. I mean, not only are you with your cohort on the air, but you've got people in the truck, a producer, a director, graphics, tape operators, camera operators, everybody else. It is a huge team effort. And you go week to week around the country and the world covering sports, and you're a part of a team, and everything's got to go right at the right time. It's a symphony that's got to come together. Everybody plays a role. And I didn't realize TV would do that. Once I got in it, that was a big attraction to me. That's really more than anything what I loved about going into TV.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your favorite broadcasting moment?
I'll tell you my favorite event that I've done that I had no idea. And it's shocking that this is my favorite. The Tour de France is the most incredible sporting event in the world. It is unbelievable. It's like a Super Bowl that moves from place to place every day. And when you cover it, and I called it 3 times for ABC back in the 90s, you literally, like, you think of a Super Bowl and the huge, all the TV trucks, the compound, and how you, well, the Tour de France does that every day in a start line and a finish line, and they move every day. You go to the mountains, you go to the coast, you're in the middle of France, in the middle of nowhere, in these small villages or big cities or whatever. And it's a part of the fabric in France. And I remember there, the last year that I did it was the year before Lance Armstrong won his first tour. And he was my broadcast partner on ABC. And it was when he was coming back from cancer, and and nobody knew whether he could make a comeback or not. We were standing there on the Champs-Élysées the last day as the peloton was ready to come down, and we do our on camera as they pass us, and I remember saying to Lance, "Hey man, I don't want to work with you next year." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, I want to call the act. I want you out there riding, you need to be back here. And he goes, "Yeah, I don't think that'll ever happen. I'm just, physically, I can't do this. It's too tough, this tour." And the next year was the first year that he won it. I'll never forget that. And you can say what you will about, what he became and but that day is a day that I'll always remember.
All right. So what's the most difficult event you've ever had to do?
I've had to take on new sports that I didn't expect. I think maybe rowing in the Olympics in London might fit that bill. I mean, eventually I enjoyed the hell out of it, but you start and you have, rowing. I haven't followed rowing. I do, what are the techniques? Yes, you go fast and you go hard. And so all the semantics of how you call it, the terminology, the first thing you want to do when you take on a new sport, one that you haven't, I've had the opportunity, because back in the day they had Wide World of Sports and I worked on that, and you would go, I've done everything from ski flying in Slovenia to mountain biking in Vail, crazy things that you would never envision. And you've got to learn the terminology. You say one thing wrong and all your credibility is gone. So I think rowing in London might have been the toughest to get up to speed, because you had canoe kayaking that you had to call too.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another challenge. Another challenge was in Sochi. I did figure skating with Johnny Weir and Tara Lipinski. But then in those off days, the same rinks, they were used for short track speed skating, which I called with Apollo Ono. And so short track, it's like boom, 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 it's over. Or if it's boom, 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 maybe it's 8 laps. But in the final lap, 3 of the guys crash, and then the guy who's in last all of a sudden wins the gold medal. So you're like, you better be on, because you don't get a second chance. And then the next race starts like 20 seconds later, and it's one race to another. And it's invigorating. I mean, you get a rush when that race starts, because you've got 15, 20 seconds to call it right, and then you're done, or else, you screwed it up.
There's also a lot of research that has to go in. That's the one thing, like I'm nowhere near entering any type of broadcasting, but you also got to do a little research, like just for having you come on the show, you got to do a little bit of background checking, make sure, you got your T's and your I's dotted, yada, yada, yada. So that's one of the things too. I'm sure, like, I couldn't imagine doing figure skating and I don't know anything about it. So I got to do a little bit of research and, get my terminology correct, people that used to be involved in the sport, the famous people. So there's a lot of things that go behind it as well that, a lot of people don't really realize, especially coming from a basketball and baseball background.
Oh yeah, I know. You're spot on with that. People don't realize it. That's okay. But they like, all right, this week I went from last week, I had the PGA Tour the last 3 weeks, PGA Tour, and it was at Riviera here in LA.
Mm-hmm.
So every week I put together a sheet of information, which I pull from all different places, and I get it on one sheet, everything from the history of the event to recent stats, whatever it is. And then you hope to use maybe 10 to 15% of that. If you use more than that, it's because you're trying to fill time, right?
Yeah.
You don't really want to use, but you have that. And the act of putting it down in a sheet in a computer and printing that out puts it up here. This week, I'm doing gymnastics in Indianapolis. Okay. It is the first gymnastics event in a year because of COVID. The last one we did was in Milwaukee, which was one of the big pre-Olympic events for what was supposed to be Tokyo 2020. That gets shut down. They haven't been able to compete for a year, which means we haven't been able to broadcast for a year. So trust me, this week, I am spending every day going over bios of people who I'm going to call this week. And it's a number of hours every day to get ready for what will be a couple of 2-hour shows over the weekend.
Yeah. All right. So obviously, you've done a lot of things. I've heard the Indianapolis 500, horse racing. You've done Tour de France. You just mentioned gymnastics, figure skating, golf. What is one that you would like to do that you haven't done?
Well, it's kind of obvious, but I mean, obviously I've spent a long time calling college basketball, but I would love to sit there on Monday night and call the national championship game.
That would be awesome.
The Final Four and the national championship game would be something I'd love to do. I don't know that it'll ever happen just because of who I work for and the other network has it. And, but that would be a dream of mine to someday call that. Here's the thing. I never mapped out my future. Mm-hmm. And some people will say, well, that's a big mistake. You got to have goals. You have to set goals. Yeah, I'll buy that. Okay. For me, it was just always dreams, not goals that followed. Once I got into TV, I wanted to be the best broadcaster I could be and do the highest level broadcasts that I could do. And I was open to avenues that have come my way, and I still am. There are still things. I mean, gymnastics I just got into 2 years ago. And I always wanted to go. Okay, I'm not going to say here's where I want to be 5 years from now, because it will cut off the other avenues and the other opportunities, which I would have accepted if I hadn't shut that off. So I've always been open to whatever came my way and been willing to at least take a good long look at, should I accept this? Should I go down this road? Okay, why not? Again, why not? Brand new sport. Let's see where it takes me. And it's been good.
That's good. So this is where I feel like we're going to get into some hard ones. These are kind of some just have fun with them questions that, hopefully it doesn't get out to some certain people. But these are some fun ones.
You're getting me in trouble now.
I might. So hopefully you don't take the easy way out. A lot of people have taken the easy way out on this is like my fun section. So a lot of people.
I might.
So we'll find out. So, all right. Who's more fun? The golf side with Nick Faldo, or would you rather do a figure skating with Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir? You got to pick one side.
I can't. That's like choosing who's more fun, my son or my daughter. I can't. That's it. You're going to think it's the easy way out. But again, it goes back to, I love the fact that 1 week I can sit next to Faldo with 6 major championships. And the next week I'm sitting next to Johnny and Tara, calling figure skating. That's the whole point. I get that is the whole point of my career. What has been so much fun is bouncing back and forth. I can't answer.
Well, I can tell you, I'm a golf guy. And as much as I love to hear you do the Golf Channel and all that stuff, I don't know a thing about figure skating, but just listening to Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir talk with you is absolutely comical at times. So if I had to pick, I'd rather you be on figure skating.
I'll take that, man. I will take that. He's the only one that gets away with calling me Terrence, other than my grandmother who has passed on. She used to call me Terrence, but it's Johnny Weir. So, and then I call him John, and he's like, I'm not a John, I'm a Johnny. I'm a Johnny, not a John. I'm like, no, you're John. If you call me Terrence, you're John.
All right.
But you're right. Nothing, put it this way. There is, actually with Faldo too, it's a different animal. Obviously, it's a different dynamic, but there's nothing scripted. There's nothing planned. Like we do not, that's kind of the whole point and how much fun it is. I can take Faldo anywhere and ask him anything, or even kind of chop him down a little bit and he'll go with it and have fun. And same with Johnny and Tara, man. We sit down and we don't even know what we're going to talk about in an on camera or go, and it just happens. So
that's a good answer. So I can kind of answer it for you. How about that?
There you go. Yeah. It's up to you.
All right. Nick, Faldo's major wins or a national championship in 1983. What's more difficult?
I will answer that. National championship in 1983. And I don't care what the premise of the question is. The best, the most exciting, the most difficult, what's better. 83 national, sorry, Sir Nick, 83 national championship, sorry.
I'd agree with you. Team sports, I mean, it's a whole nother thing. You got all those guys, a bunch of different variables coming in. I'd have to agree with that one.
Look, you're right here. That's me and Low Charles. Low C, God rest his soul. But in the locker room, see, green jacket. I mean, come on, just you're by yourself. You put the green jacket, teammates.
Yep. There you go. The basketball's where it's at. So you have a 3-point shot. Nick Faldo has a 10-footer right to left break. You can only pick one person. Who would you take?
Well, if it was a left to right break, I would definitely take me. A right to left break, right-handers like the right to left. Like he might make that a good deal of the time. We've actually had this discussion on it. You know how we had this? This was just a couple of weeks ago, because you remember the Steph video where he made 105 threes in a row from the corner. Yeah. So we started talking about that, and then Nick was asking me, how many could you make? I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to say I can make 105 because, I said, but I used to end every practice session making 20 in a row from all 5 spots, baseline, wing, top of the key, but, from beyond. He's like, wow, 20 in a row. I don't know if I could make 20 in a row if I had to make that around the clock, 10 footers, So he might have answered your question there that, the 3, not him. And I'm not going to argue with a 6-time major champ.
All right. So where's your favorite place that you've had a broadcast? Like the favorite place, whether it's a golf course, whether it's a country, where's one of the places that you've said, you know what, that was a lot of fun to be a part of?
Well, my favorite place to call a golf tournament is, number one, my favorite event every year is the Open Championship. And my favorite place for the Open Championship is St. Andrews.
Okay.
There's just nothing like it. First of all, it's the first basically known place where they play golf. It's the home of golf, right?
Yeah.
It goes back hundreds of years. Every week you say, who's the golf course architect? Well, it's God. It's just, I know old Tom Morris kind of laid out most of the holes, whatever. It's basically, bunkers came to be, sand traps, because sheep would burrow in the sand-based turf to get out of the wind, which is blowing 30 miles an hour. And that's why there are bunkers on golf courses, right? And I remember being at St. Andrews when Jack Nicklaus played his last competitive round in the major championship. And we had the early broadcast, Nick and I and Mike Tirico, and I think it was going to TNT with Ernie and the guys. And we were standing there as Nicholas came down 17, the road hole, going to 18. And we both, all three of us kind of looked at us, like, what are we doing? We need to run down there. So we ran down like kids, Tirico and I and Faldo, to get a spot right next to the green at 18. And there were people hanging out of windows, all those, buildings right there. The RNA clubhouse is right there, but other buildings and the shops, and everybody hanging out. We just looked around. You couldn't believe it. And then Jack Nicklaus makes the downhill slider 10 to 15 feet or whatever for birdie on the last hole. And I still get chills.
Yeah.
So I would, if I had one event, I would take you to St. Andrews for the Open.
All right. Did you get to play St. Andrews?
Oh yeah, many times.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm gonna have to come out and hang out with you more because I got a feeling you've played some great courses.
Come on out, man. Come on out.
All right. This is another one that a lot of people couldn't really pick. They just couldn't find an answer, so they kind of dodged
they answered two
bit.
of the three, right? I mean,
that's good. You're doing good. So those ones were your particulars. So that was like for you. These ones are like have to do with state, and so this is going to be one that everybody's had the exact question. So, favorite place to eat around campus?
Well, eat and get a beer at Players Retreat.
All right. See,
I mean,
I'm the first one to say Players Retreat. I've had Emilio's, I've had Clues Coney.
Oh, they're going to kill me at
Chick-fil-A on campus. So.
You know what? You're right. They're going to kill me at Emilio's, and I'll go 1 and 1A. That's right. Emilio's is in there too, but a pretty good history at both.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's the thing. No, but you can't go wrong with any of those. They're all great places. But I gotta ask the hard questions, man.
I understand. I got you. Hey, I'll tell you. Can I tell you a quick story about Emilio's though?
Yep.
Okay. So it was another in that time when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and V basically made up my mind. But Al McGuire, legendary Al McGuire, was in town doing an NBC broadcast, and we went out to Emilio's after the game. I was a grad assistant at the time. It was me, it was V, and it was Al McGuire in one of the back rooms in Emilio's, right? And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And it was Al would say something, and then V would have to translate it because I had no idea what Al was talking about. Terry, tell you what you do. You go down the street and you coach the St. Anthony's 6th grade CYOT. That's what you do. And I'm like, well, what do you, and V, so V would say, he means coaching, it's too tough. Go into TV. Don't go coach. If you want to get your case coaching, go coach CYO ball or something. And then Al would say something else, and V would translate again at Emilio. So
that's how I feel playing overseas. The coach would say something, and I have someone right behind me translating the play. That's almost ideal. So, what's your most memorable moment in an NC State uniform? And I have to take out. You can't pick the national championship.
Well, that's okay, because that's not my favorite moment.
Even better.
It is the home game, my sophomore year, that year against Carolina, when it was the first time me in a uniform, and I think first time V beat Dean. First time we beat Dean Smith, Michael Jordan. It was the most incredible atmosphere I have ever been around to this day in a sporting event. I mean, Reynolds Coliseum, which I got to tell you, I nothing against the new play. Reynolds was special, man.
Yeah.
There was nothing like walking up those steps, running out to 13,000 people at Reynolds. It was the loudest place I've ever been in to this day. And we beat them going away. And I had personal experience. Dean and I think it was Michael got back-to-back technical fouls.
And
I was the designated free throw taker for technical fouls. I had 4 straight technical foul shots. With the stage was all mine. Can you imagine Reynolds? And with every make, and I made all 4, and it got louder and louder and louder, and the place just erupted after the 4th one. We win that game, and horns start going off all over Raleigh, and that lasted until the wee hours They TP'd, they rolled the entire campus. It had toilet paper on every tree in every building. Raleigh exploded that night. And it is my favorite experience in sports ever to this day.
Well, so my side, I guess, story was, so my dad played a year at Western Carolina, and he played you guys, I don't know, 84, 85 maybe. And he told me, he's like, I'll tell you, you playing, I think it's PNC, it was RBC while I was there. He said, you play in that arena, but I'll tell you, there's nothing like playing in Reynolds. He went to go shoot a free throw, and he was probably he'll probably yell at me for saying maybe 75, percent. I mean, he wasn't good, but he
wasn't in your territory.
Yeah. But I think he like air banked one and just grazed the side. And he's like, there was nothing like the background and everybody yelling at you. He said it was just unbelievable. And he said it was one of the greatest experiences to this day is just playing in Reynolds. So
that's very cool to hear, because I got to tell you, we played Michigan State, might have been my junior year. Scott Skiles was playing, right? And, Reynolds was old. Reynolds, you had the 2 locker rooms down in the dungeon. And then people think this is crazy, but I tell my kids they're like, what? You had one set of showers. Like, both teams showered in the same big shower, which is like twice the area of my garage here. And I remember coming out of the shower, and Skiles was ready to go in the shower, and he just looked at me and goes, that was the loudest place I have ever experienced in my life. I was like, yeah, that's Reynolds, man. Sorry. Yeah.
Great times. I wish I would have had the opportunity to, obviously I played a few games, but it's nothing like playing back in the day when you guys were there. So here's the last question. And this is not a difficult one, but it's one that, I've gotten similar answers. What do you miss most about playing in an NC State uniform?
I miss the students and the experience. Here's the thing. I hope it still is like this. I wouldn't know because I'm not still playing. But at least during that time, and in part because of Reynolds, I guess, but like this whole Krzyzewskiville at Duke, you were doing that at NC State before that.
Yeah.
And every game, and sometimes it was several nights at a time, they were out in tents, sleeping out for tickets to be the first in line. And, you'd take pizzas, you'd order Domino's and take them out there. And then you're walking on campus and people are shouting stuff at you, and you walk through the tunnel and stuff is written, about the upcoming game or the last game or something. You felt like you were part of the student body who was right there with you, living and dying with every game. And it was so cool to suit up. And it kind of goes back to, don't get me wrong, the national championship changed my life. But what I remember the most were the regular season games in the ACC and those matchups against, Mark Price one night, you're going against Adrian Branch the next night, Michael Jordan the next night. Ralph Sampson, and the student body living and dying every week with you. That's what I miss the most about suiting up for NC State.
Perfect. Well, this concludes. Everybody listening, Wolfpack Nation, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Terry, I appreciate you coming on. Had a blast. This is the one. I know. I told my wife, I'm like, if I had David Thompson on, I think I'd still be more excited to have Terry Gannon.
Oh man, no.
I'm not even joking.
I appreciate that.
Not even. It's funny because every time it's like, because I play a lot of golf. I watch a lot of golf, and you'll be on and you'll be talking. I'll just look at someone and be like, you know where he's from? And everybody's just like, let me guess, NC State. I'm like, that's my guy.
Hey, but isn't that the way though? I do that on the air all the time. If you listen to broadcasts, whether it's golf or figure skating or whatever, if somebody that comes up in the conversation or is on the air, I will get in the fact that they're from state. And all the guys, you know, who I'm on the air with and girl, they just look at me and roll their eyes. Here we go, NC State. But it's happening. I'm sorry. You're not escaping without the mention.
Perfect. Perfect. So, all right, everybody, thank you again. Thanks for coming on the show. And I'm sure we'll have another one out here soon. So thank you, Terry, and go Pack.